already discussed a large number of poets from England and America, and also sometimes French, and this coverage has been really remarkable in the sense, that most of the selected poets appealed to the 20th century audience, and it got a good response also from the students, from the scholars in our own country, maybe even outside. And today perhaps is the penultimate session, if not the last one, and then we'll start with a new series in a couple of months. And for today we have Professor Payal Nagpal, who teaches English in Janki Devi Memorial College, Delhi University. And today's poet that she has chosen for deep study of certain texts, one or two poems, is Denise Levertov. And it's a kind of mixed breed in the best sense of the word, that the genius comes from both England and America. And as Dr. Payal Nagpal told me before the lecture begins, that it's in fact a much more complex case of poetic expression, because she also enjoys two more sources of inspiration, Roman Catholicism and Russia. So you have an international personality in the form of a poet, and then Professor Payal Nagpal will throw light on one or two selected poems of Denise Levertov. So over to you, Professor Payal Nagpal.
Thank you, Professor Prakash. And I think Denise Levertov is a poet. She's not much talked about. I think people who generally work in the field would be aware of her work, but in that sense, I think the way we look at a lot of the other poets, probably Levertov, gets left behind. So I think two areas that are of prime importance when it comes to Levertov's poetry. One is, issues related to gender, and the other is war. So these are two very interesting, and she has poetry on both these themes. Of course, there are poems on other themes as well, but these are the two predominant themes that we actually see in Levertov's poetry. So I've selected one from each aspect, and we'll be discussing the poem Wedding Ring, and which of course, as the title itself suggests, is about gender concerns. And the second poem is related to the Vietnam War, and it's titled What Were They Like? So if we here is a picture of Denise Levertov. She was born in 1923 and lived pretty much up to the other day, that's 1997. And she was born in Essex, England, and her father was a Hasidic Jew from Russia, and mother was Welsh. So, she enjoys in that sense the richness of both cultures and both
so not Roman
traditions.
Catholic, she was a Jew.
Okay. Yes, and the mother was Welsh. Yes, she of course later converts much later to Christianity, and she was influenced by the Black Mountain poets of North Carolina, and another poet who she was greatly influenced by is William Carlos Williams. And one of the important aspects, if we try to kind of bracket her work under a particular theme or a particular movement in English poetry, then she is looked at as a neo-romantic. So she was greatly influenced by Wordsworth, Keats, and the other romantic poets, and those influences are seen in her writing, and so she's often referred to as a neo-romantic poet. So we see a mix of several identities, and very early in life she had decided that she was going to be a poet. Denise Levertov is somebody who had been schooled at home, so she was believed that she was just about 12 when she sent poems to T.S. Eliot, who gave her a favorable response and also responded with a 2-page letter. So her work of course did gain a lot of recognition and was appreciated. She eventually married the American writer Michelle Goodman and moved to the US. So some of the important themes, as one has already mentioned, one is that the whole idea of how the personal is itself the political. If we look at the feminist movement, especially the second wave onwards, for somebody who's born in 1923, she would have been greatly influenced by the second wave of feminism, by the students' movement in Paris and world over. So the 1960s, in that sense, were a very, very important moment, in history, and Denise Levertov was greatly influenced by these factors. So, of course, when she's asked about, the fact that is she a kind of feminist and so on, so she says she would not like to be bracketed, but certainly, for her, it's like, just being a woman is what comes naturally. So, she's writing about what she sees around her. So, at the same time, 60s and the whole context of the Vietnam War figures greatly in her poetry, and of course in later work with her conversion, religious themes also appear in her writing. So even when we move on to the first poem, which is the wedding ring, I'll give a little bit of a background through another poem which is titled About Marriage. So and if we see, actually there are these three poems that one comes across. One is about marriage, one is the ache of marriage, and one is the wedding ring. So, about marriage is interesting, and it says that the speaker, the poetic voice, says that she does not want to be locked in wedlock, and says, I want marriage, an encounter. Now, this is very important, because we are looking here, she's already suggesting that marriage, it's almost like a conversation between equals. So she says that she wants it, she says, don't lock me in wedlock, which automatically throws light on the word wedlock itself, where it is, the woman who gets locked in a sense. So she says marriage should not be a lock of any sort, and should be an encounter. She says, I told you about the green light of May. And after this, what is very interesting is that there are these long, a long section which is in parentheses, which is in brackets. So one must raise the question of why it is in brackets and what is the point that Levertov is trying to make here. So she says, she begins by saying, don't lock me in wedlock, I want marriage and encounter. And the next lines she moves to, I told you about the green light of May. So in a sense, the green light of May kind of indicates a kind of newness. And here in the brackets then we have, a veil of quiet befallen the downtown park late, Saturday afternoon, long shadows and cool air, scent of new grass, fresh leaves, blossom on the threshold of abundance. And all this continues in parentheses. And the birds I met there, birds of passage breaking their journey, 3 birds each of a different species. The azela breasted with round pole dark, the brindle merry mouse gliding one, and the smallest golden as coarse and wearing a black Venetian mask. And she says that with them the 3 deuce hen birds feathered in tender lively brown. She says, I stood there a half hour under the enchantment, no one passed near. Please note that even all these lines that I have just read out, all of this is in brackets. The birds saw me and let me be near them. So this is where it ends. So there is this moment, it's a moment that one can call fantastic. It's a moment that has some kind of freshness, new energy, and this has been bracketed. And she says it's not, after the brackets, and she says it's not irrelevant. I would be met and meet you so. So we are back to the whole dialogue of wedlock between you and I. So she says, I would be met and meet you. So the encounter becomes clear in a green, airy space, not locked in. So in a sense, the usage of the brackets here is very, very poignant, because it's almost like the subtext, and it's the woman's thoughts who would like to, kind of the subtextual understanding of marriage as an encounter needs to be kind of brought forth. So it is this, the recognition in a sense of the subtext or the bracketed concept that allows a transition in the last part to the idea that of course I would be met and I would meet you, but in a green airy space and not locked in. So we see here these are her thoughts on marriage. This is what she's saying marriage should be all about. So here again,
No, I definitely wonder as to what she is trying to say, and it's about marriage, and she is committing herself to equality, and that equality becomes the reigning theme here. But it's also connected with the stand that the poet is taking, perhaps about life. And I would just put a question slightly framed in a different manner. You said that she was self-schooled, and that in that sense she didn't come very near what is called academicism, and perhaps academics in the early 20th century taught every poet to be modernist, and she was able to escape this modernism and talked about a social theme called marriage, and that too in positive terms, because marriage might give a chance for a person to assert oneself and equality, and the same marriage is being discussed by all modernist poets and taken as something cynically. So what is your comment on that?
Yes, I agree with you. I think there is a kind of freshness to her writing, and this use of a kind of just a simple structure. Like in this poem about marriage, I was very struck by the use of the brackets, because it immediately, and especially as a woman reader, it speaks to the reader as a kind of subtext, that a thought that one is not able to express. But if there is a frame that is to be created, a frame of marriage, it's not as if one is rejecting that frame in this poem. But if there is to be a frame of that sort, then it has to be looked at as an encounter.
It's a very fine insight, very fine insight that you're conveying and sharing with the audience, because the use of the bracket is very significant here.
Yes.
It's not a part of the text, but it's very much a part of the text at the same time, because it stands at the back of the poet and is on her mind.
And it is a recognition of this subtext that allows a transition, which allows the woman to, the voice here, the poetic voice here, to get the strength to say that, yes, I would be met and I would meet you, but not in a state where I'm locked, but in a state where it's green and airy. So the green light of May that she starts with, I think that acquires a lot of form, meaning.
Which means you would call the bracket the identifier of woman writing.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Certainly. A kind of identifier signifying the subtext at a linguistic level, but a woman's mind, interiority. I think that becomes very significant here. So in a similar kind of vein is another poem on the theme of marriage and wedding in that sense. So wedding ring, and one must note that there is this hyphen between wedding and ring. So how the two are in a sense kind of tied to each other. So again, these are short poems. My wedding ring lies in a basket as if at the bottom of a well. Nothing will come to fish it back up and onto my finger again. It lies among keys to abandoned houses, nails waiting to be kneaded and hammered into some wall, telephone numbers with no names attached, idle paper clips. It can't be given away for fear of bringing ill luck. It can't be sold, for the marriage was good in its own time, though that time is gone. Could some artificer beat into it bright stones, transform it into a dazzling circlet no one could take for solemn betrothal or to make promises living will not let them keep? Change it into a simple gift I could give in friendship.
You read it very well, and one thing that is striking in this poem is that is a total, I say again, total unequivocal rejection of marriage here.
Yes.
The way she is using her words so carefully.
Yes. So, which is why, I thought it apt to bring in the poem about marriage and to provide that as a kind of backdrop that these are the views expressed in about marriage. And here, the wedding ring, which, it's symbolic of the lock in a sense that she speaks about in the other poem. So, the wedding ring, to now analyze this particular poem, it lies among keys to abandoned houses, and the interesting thing about abandoned houses is that there's a possibility that at one time these houses were full of people. So, like she says that the marriage was good in its time, but that time is over. Similarly, these houses too might have been full of life, full of people, and so on. But now this wedding ring lies
and would
like
open
the key
certain
to an
locks.
abandoned house.
Would open certain locks.
Yes.
But now everything is locked out.
Now everything is locked out. And also the interesting thing I think about the key to an abandoned house is that one doesn't go there very often. So the key keeps lying there, and because you don't use the keys, the wedding ring is lying among the keys. So you also don't use the wedding ring. So nails waiting to be kneaded and hammered into some wall. So which means that there is a basket that carries all sorts of odds and ends, and among this kind of paraphernalia lie the keys. So telephone numbers with no names attached. So a lot of times people scribble numbers on scraps of paper, and then forget as to who this telephone number really speaking belongs to. So all this is a list of items that are not going to be required. That the poet, the voice here says that she doesn't require it. Telephone numbers with no names attached, idle paper clips. These are stray paper clips that one is never going to use. And it is amongst this kind of stuff that a wedding ring is lying. And wedding ring is considered to be something that would be lying in the most precious of spaces, in the sense that one would keep it very carefully and one would keep it somewhere where it is going to be handy. But in contrast, the wedding ring here is lying in almost in a pool of stuff that is really speaking not required. So it can't be given away. So she can't dispose, just like the keys to the abandoned house. I think that's the indicator here. Just like the keys can't be disposed, because at some point you might need to visit that house. Similarly, the wedding ring is just lying and it can't be disposed, because it might there is fear that it might bring bad luck, and it can't be sold. And here is the interesting line that I've already referred to: for the marriage was good in its own time, though that time is gone. So it might have had some merit, some goodness, but now that time is over.
It wasn't exactly profound even then.
Even then. Because there the desire of the poet's voice is to look at marriage as an encounter, and not indicating again the wedding ring, the hyphen, the fact that they exist in a kind of lock. So the ring is an indicator of that lock.
And see the subtlety. She is not making a statement. She is just letting things come out of their own.
Of their own. Could some artificer beat into it bright stones? So she says that, well, the wedding ring generally, in the Western concept is just a simple band. So the band indicates the wedding ring, and she wonders that is it possible for some artificer to beat into it bright stones? Now the only possibility is that the ring should be redone. And the question here is, what should it be redone for? So here Levertov, brings in the idea. She says, could some artificer beat into it bright stones, transform it into a dazzling circlet? No one could take for solemn betrothal, or to make promises living will not let them keep. Now here, I think the idea of the wedding ring solemnizing a marriage and indicating a betrothal is, and betrothal here also, if we keep the next line in mind, also indicates betrayal. So for solemn betrothal or to make promises living will not let them keep. So you make certain promises on the wedding day through the ring, but these are promises that you're not going to keep. So, so change it into a simple gift I could give in friendship. Now, here I think is a very important turning point in this particular poem. It ends on this note, but the idea is it ends on a note where it's posing a question, but hidden beneath this particular question is the larger question, isn't friendship more or better than wedding? Isn't it better, isn't a relationship between two people of friendship better than marriage, which is, the betrothal, the betrayal is what it brings in, because it's not possible to kind of keep it in that sense. So this is, an important question that Levertov is raising here. So the wedding ring, it's her way, in a sense, of rejecting or indicating that now it has no use. So yes.
The idea of friendship that comes at the end is a different kind of an idea that is based on equality,
Yes.
that's based on mutual choice,
Choice.
that also based on the right to disagree, to say no, and everything. All that freedom implies is there involved in friendship. And there also she is, very clear, but not exactly committed. Because
Yes.
sometimes, you require more of yourself
Sure.
in the poem and in the relationship than somebody else who might be an intruder. So the last bit, which is positive in human association, is friendship. So I consider it a very valuable, idea or a form that she is able to envision and dream about for the future. That some kind of friendship will stay, but marriage will certainly go if it's not already gone, because she's using the word gone.
It's gone.
Yes.
And also that, an object like the wedding ring, which is an indicator of, the locking, in a sense, in a relationship, it would be better to decorate it with those stones so that it could be given away
It's
in
a
friendship.
decoration piece.
Yes.
It's a wall hanging.
Hanging.
It's put there, fixed
Yes.
there. Yes,
But
yes.
her suggestion is that it could be made better only to be given in friendship, and not to the idea of wedding as marriage as a kind of lock is very clearly expressed. And there are other poems also that she has on marriage, like the ache of marriage, where she says that we look for communion and are turned away, beloved each and
Ache
each.
is A-C-H-E.
Ache, yes, the ache of marriage. And here, of course, there is an indication of, it's a sensuous poem, so there's an indication of sexuality. But here again, the whole idea of seeking equality and not really speaking getting it is also there. We look for communion and are turned away, beloved, each and each. And she says there is some joy not to be known outside it, two by two, in the arc of the ache of it. So I think if we look at the first poem where we discussed the idea of the green light of May, where the light is, it indicates fresh leaves, new grass, and a kind of abundance, and the different kinds of birds that she meets, and how in a sense that organic connection with nature and communion with nature is enchanting. And that is what makes her realize that this is what she desires, and the way in which marriage exists in its present form, it is nothing but a lock. And so she says that you meet me in that green airy space and not really remain locked. Similarly, in Wedding Ring, she privileges the idea of friendship over all else. So if one were to actually look at the way in which a lot of the images are built here. So as mentioned earlier, that she's looked at as a neo-romantic, and she says that, to quote Denise Levertov herself, she says, "My early and abiding love of Keats and Wordsworth is inseparable from my early and equally abiding love for the English countryside." And she says that in the case of Keats, the other strong factors were the sensuous music of his poetry And when I got into my teens, the personality so vivid in his letters, so and in his attitude to poetry. So it's these influences that also allows her to evolve a kind of balance, I think, in her writing, which is very different from the way in which poetry was being written at that particular point of time. The influence of actually the Romantics and Coleridge, Eastern plastic poetry, or Wordsworth style, and at the same time, the poets like William Carlos Williams. So I think these are the influences on Denise Levertov.
So far as the point of marriage and wedlock is concerned, and that is there in the wedding ring, and that poem already has been dealt with in detail by Professor Payal Nagpal. We come to the end of the first part of the discussion, and here the social institution of marriage, matrimony, that is being viewed critically by the poet, and then it's not a negative poem at all, because she believes in relationship, she believes in friendship, she believes in communion, but that has to be based on equality. So this is the kind of message that is put across by a 20th century woman poet, and who also lived on till the other day in the 21st century, and she was able to produce a kind of simplicity that is very subtle, because the words are very simple here. There is not a single word that I found to use dictionary for. But then this conversational simple style is hiding a lot of complexity behind it, and that is what Professor Payal Nagpal revealed in her analysis. So let's wait for the other theme that Professor Payal Nagpal has already indicated, and that is about neo-romanticism, and that will be taken up in some detail in the remaining part. Thank you.